Hi everybody. So thanks for coming along. Today I'm going to be talking about my research process in terms of both kind of my inspiration and in terms of the inspiration for the process and actually what I've actually done to create the piece. But I'm going to begin, I'm going to start off by doing a quick introduction to the exhibition in the virtual tunnel gallery, which is part of the project, which is based on the Interactive Research Day. So that the work in this piece is my work and also the work of the participants of the Research Day. So we're going to do a little tour around that, and then I'm going to start my talk. So I've picked for a quote really to introduce this interactive exhibition. I picked a quote from Wendy McNaughton, who's she's an illustrator and graphic journalist. She does a lot of reportage illustration, and her quote is, "Drawing helps us slow down, look closely, and connect with each other in the world." And I think that was really what I was trying to achieve within the Research Day itself. Right. So if we just want to get in here and have a little look. So I'll do a full screen there. Okay. So with this exhibition, we thought it'd be really nice to kind of retain the sketchbooks from the actual Interactive Research Day, because it is all about reportage. It was all about reportage illustration, live drawing, being out there in the field with the sketchbook, and we really wanted to continue this through to the exhibition. So we decided on some vitrines, which are down the centre here, to display the participants' work in. And then on the walls, we went for some the photographs of the day. So that was documented by, the day was documented by photographer Rachel Deakin, really to kind of contextualise the work and give more of a sense of, what had been going on in the day. So I'm going to be talking, I'll be talking a little bit more about the Interactive Research Day later on in the process, but it involved talks by myself and P.A. Morbid, a local historian at the Masham, which is Navigator North venue. And then in the afternoon, we had a reportage illustration workshop held at Base Camp, and the kind of music, arts, events, food and drink space in Exchange Square, and then at the Zetland bar and restaurant on Zetland Road, both of which were amazing venues, really kind of rich with heritage and architectural details. So just having a little bit of a look around, you can see the I always do this, end up zooming in too much. Right, we'll go back down there. So if we zoom in on one of the sketchbooks here, so we can see an example here, a really nice example of some of the reportage illustration from the day that was done at the Zetland Hotel. So the participants really kind of, check another one from Nikki there, the participants were really kind of doing a mixture of work, which was kind of capturing broad scenes, for example, a full room, people in a room. This is a really nice example of that from Nikki Rogers, one of the participants. When we were at Base Camp, there was actually a record fair on in one of the rooms, and she's really kind of captured a sense of that. So we've got a kind of full scene, but then participants were also capturing within their sketchbooks, really kind of zooming in on architectural detail. So for example, here's some illustrations from the Zetland. So this is zooming in on details from the day. So, you know, there was candlelight in the Zetland, and there was really kind of, you know, beautiful original vintage tiles as well. We've also got a mask in there as well, which is very on brand for 2020 and then 21. And yeah, I think that's Leanne's, and Leanne's here this evening, which is great to see. So yes, I would definitely encourage you to come and have a little bit of a look around the interactive gallery. It was really important for me as part of the project to actually use the interactive gallery as a kind of showcase for other people's work, because the idea was that this day was for the project, it was really kind of about capturing a perspective of Middlesbrough, and what I really wanted to do was capture kind of people in the community's perspective as well, and have a permanent record of that. So it was really ideal to have the virtual gallery as a companion piece to my mural underneath the year 66. Okay. So yes, I would just definitely have a little bit more of a look around there, but I would just really encourage everybody to go and have a little bit of a look in more detail there, because there's lots to look at. Okay, great. Okay, so I'll just go on and I'll go on full screen with my PowerPoint. Okay, so the piece, my piece is called Recreation, and I'm going to be talking about the research and the process there. So I've just been through the virtual tunnel gallery tour. So I'll just talk a little bit more about my initial inspirations for the actual commission, my proposal, what kind of the original intentions were, you know, how things changed throughout the process and different influences that I looked at, and also what I took from doing the action research in terms of, you know, having a research day, and actually did a walking tour with Morbid again, the local historian, which was really helpful as well, and how that really shaped my vision for what I wanted to do. So my proposal to respond to heritage illustration in the house was really influenced by a recent 30-day sketchbook challenge that I did in September of this year. So I'd realised that over summer I'd got a little bit stagnant with my drawing practice, and I wanted to do something to hold myself accountable and really kind of immerse myself in drawing again, which I hadn't really been doing for a couple of months. I was also very aware that in terms of my practice, I often draw people a lot. That's kind of mainly what I've done, and mainly what I've done commercially as well. And I really wanted to kind of practice starting drawing some more scenes and kind of drawing the world around me in terms of kind of interiors, architectures, landscapes as well, because I've not always really been that interested in drawing landscapes as well. So I really kind of wanted to get outside of my comfort zone, and I certainly did that. So when I saw the opportunity to apply for the Tunnel Gallery Hidden Middlesbrough Commission, that was focused on the Middlesbrough Heritage Zone and that embodied the spirit of the Winter Garden, it really, you know, I thought, right, this is kind of perfect for what I've been working on recently. So it was one of those really nice moments of synergy I think you can sometimes get within your practice, where you've been doing something self-generated, and then actually there's a commercial commissioned opportunity that really kind of fits in with that really well. Because one of the things that I also remembered that I really liked doing when I was doing these sketchbook drawings was drawing kind of architectural details, and also having signage in there as well, and kind of exploring typography a little bit more. So that was definitely something I wanted to get in there. So in terms of the final outcome, my proposal was to have a reportage illustration inspired image on the billboard under the year 66. Really kind of inspired by that, really trying to like capture those moments of the world around you. I also planned an interactive research day that was a mixture of talks from myself and a local historian, and also the workshop. So really, you know, to kind of capture those other perspectives of members of the community, and also really kind of encouraging other people to do their own reportage drawing. Because I think as a professional illustrator, like when you tell people what you do, one of the main comments you always get from people is, "Oh, I can't draw, I'm terrible," and it makes me really, really sad, because everybody can draw. It's just, I think people think they can't draw because they can't draw in a photorealistic manner, or somebody, you know, they were at school and maybe they were told they weren't very good at it, and that's a real shame. So I wanted to do something that was really kind of accessible for everybody, that everybody could just come, all the participants could just come along, you know, come along with like a positive attitude and just have a go. And it was, you know, as is always whenever you set these kind of workshops, it was, you know, the work everybody came up with was fantastic. And then another outcome was a zine print resource, which is something we're kind of working on now to wrap up the project, which is going to be available in the Masham and other museum and gallery venues in Middlesbrough that's going to be, you know, a little bit of it's been a kind of combination of a print, but also a resource and guidance for how people can kind of do their own reportage illustrations. So it's really taking a little bit of the information that was within the interactive research day and then disseminating it. So just kind of giving the project a wider reach than just those who attended the interactive research day. So I keep using the term reportage illustration, and I think it would be really helpful to just define what that actually means. So reportage illustration is a type of visual journalism. Reportage illustrators sketch on location to tell a specific story. The illustrator conveys a narrative and reports a specific moment in time to the audience, much like a journalist. The central premise of reportage illustration is storytelling. And so that's really something that I wanted to capture within my piece, and we also wanted to kind of capture within the interactive research days as well. It's kind of, what's your perspective? What story are you telling? And I think it was really interesting, I think, when you start doing historical research, especially actually around you know, somewhere like Middlesbrough and the Winter Gardens, of what actually remains and what is there for us to look back on and learn about at the time. And it's really interesting to see kind of whose voices have been recorded and whose hasn't as well, and kind of what narratives have been deemed to be important and what narratives have been deemed, you know, to be unimportant as well. So kind of that was something that really kind of sparked my interest as well. So one of my inspirations was urban spaces in transition, especially the work of Lucinda Rogers. So she's a reportage illustrator. Like her work's really, really lovely, as you can see. She's somebody, she's actually recently was reporting, I think it was for the Financial Times, reporting on the COP26 summit. And the work she did for that was really, really good. And she's actually collating it in a book as we speak. So this was, I thought this project was really interesting because she was using reportage illustration to capture the gentrification of Ridley Road Market in London. So this was a solo show at the House of Illustration in London, and that was something. It's actually kind of ongoing, because I think she recently had something on her Instagram that they were, I think they're going to be demolishing part of it or something like that, and they're still trying to save it. But what she was just really doing was kind of capturing this world before it possibly, this world of this market, you know, it's kind of quite like 1970s, 60s, and the world of these markets before it disappears. And I really thought that was quite an interesting idea, because Middlesbrough's really, there's a lot of change happening in Middlesbrough at the moment in terms of the way the town centre looks, partly because of COVID and partly because of other changes. And I just thought, you know, how interesting it would be to capture the heritage action zone at this moment before things change. For example, they're having the work is being done to regenerate Exchange Square. There's a lot of new venues popping up, and I thought it'd be really nice to, you know, to kind of record this moment, because who knows kind of what the heritage action zone is going to look like in a year, 2 years, 5 years, 10 years. And I think it'd be very interesting to kind of to leave something that's documenting what it was like at the end of 2021. So yeah, here we've got a mixture of kind of the street scenes and the people, and just a really kind of sense of immediacy and a sense of place that she's managed to capture there. So my other inspiration was bold and colourful public art, in particular Laquena McIver. So this work is from various sites in London, and she's somebody who does a lot of public art. It's at a really large scale and really kind of typographically based. And I just like it because it's just really kind of bold and arresting. It's one at Cricklewood Station there. Bold and arresting and cheerful. And her work is always in these, it's always in an urban environment as well. And I just think they're just so bright and striking and cheerful. So that was something else that I had in mind before going into the project. I was thinking, you know, because definitely Exchange Square under the A66, there was a lot of concrete and greyness around, and that was something that I had in mind, to think about, you know, how can I inject this kind of colour and energy into that space, and that was definitely something I wanted to achieve in terms of the colour palette that I was using as well, and also in terms of getting some typography in there in some way as well. So in terms of my research process, I started off finding out more about the Middlesbrough Winter Garden. So the Middlesbrough Winter Garden was opened in 1907 by Sir Hugh and Lady Florence Bell. So Sir Hugh, he was a co-owner of Bell Brothers Steelworks, and Lady Florence Bell was his wife, but she was also a playwright and writer as well. And they wanted to provide an affordable venue where the working classes could relax and socialise in an alcohol-free environment. Because at the time, which he talks about in a book, which I'll be speaking about next, there was a lot of pubs basically, and pubs and places where alcohol was consumed were really the only places that were kind of open for people to kind of socialise a lot of the time, which was, as she identified, a big social problem. In terms of the Middlesbrough Winter Garden, there's not much information about it in the public domain, because when I applied for the commission, I thought, all right, I'll have a quick Google and see if I can find out, you know, a little bit more about it. And there's really not anything there, because I didn't, you know, I was just like, oh, well, where even was it? And then, you know, seeing that it was on Dundas Street in Middlesbrough, I was like, all right, it's where the Dundas Arcade was as well. So it was actually really helpful to begin the project at Navigator North. They very generously shared with me the Winter Garden research document that had been put together by Dr. Michelle Allen and P.A. Morbid in 2016, which had some really just fantastic information in there. Like I said, that isn't really available in the public domain. So that was really, really helpful for a starting point for me to kind of really get a sense of what the Winter Garden was, what it involved, kind of a snapshot of the time, and just really have more of an understanding of this place that's really kind of the centre of the commission. So the next step in my research project was actually reading Lady Florence Bell's book, At the Works, A Study of a Manufacturing Town, and that manufacturing town was Middlesbrough. It was published in 1907 and was lent to me by Vicky Holbrook, so thank you very much, Vicky. Yeah, it was really, really interesting. Like, it is, I didn't read the whole thing, but it's quite, you know, short chapters, so I kind of dipped in and out, and I did actually read the chapter about the steel nine making process as well, because it was one of those things, living around here and growing up around here, you always hear about it, and I was like, I don't actually know how it works, so that was quite interesting, as was the chapter about women and girls as well, and also the chapter on recreation as well, which is where I got the title for the piece from. So yeah, it was a really fascinating insight into working class life in Middlesbrough at the start of the 20th century, a very, you know, as I'm sure everyone probably realises, a very, very hard life. So it was really interesting, but it does, as a historical document and a piece of work, it does have limitations, because this was somebody who was, you know, in inverted commas, really an outsider from the upper classes, writing about the working classes, and really kind of being quite critical of the social problems that she identifies. For example, alcohol is a large one, which was, you know, why she was involved in setting up the Winter Garden, and also kind of women who were married to the workers kind of keeping house as well. And she's quite critical, and she was actually an anti-suffragist as well, which is quite interesting and seems somewhat contradictory, because she was a lot of she was the stepmother of the more famous Gertrude Bell, who obviously really kind of, you know, was a renowned traveller. And she was also a playwright, and actually she wrote a lot of plays, you know, they were put on in the West End. She had a thriving career, and she was afforded a lot of opportunities actually that other women of any class actually, even her own, weren't afforded. But if you kind of bear that in mind, it was also really interesting, and kind of gave a good insight, and really made me have more of an understanding of the context in which I was working. So after doing a lot of reading, it was really nice to go out on a walking tour of the Has with local historian P.A. Morbid. So here's him pointing at a blue plaque. There's quite a lot of them in the Has zone. So this was at the just over the border actually of the house where Henry Bocco and John Vaughan lived as well. So that was interesting. So when I talk about the heritage action zone, it's the area here that is outlined in blue. So you can see I've got my pointer over there. So there's Middlesbrough Station. We've got there's Zetland Road there, and there if you go through there. So this area, this is all the area kind of over the border, and actually underneath here where the pointer is, that's where the Tunnel Gallery billboard is as well. So it really is kind of dead in the centre of the heritage action zone, and this was really helpful because Morbid is a mine of information really about the area and about the Winter Garden, and it was really nice hearing all of that information from somebody whilst actually being in that place and looking around and it really kind of brought it alive, and just kind of getting lots of kind of little known facts. And we actually went to the original site of the Winter Garden here. So it's just on a kind of alley out the back of Dundas Arcade as well, and so that's up there as well. So that was really interesting. So it really kind of sparked a lot of ideas and just really deepened my understanding of the context in which I was working. So the next step in the research process was the interactive research day, which we held in November. And so here's myself and the participants outside the lovely Masham. So this day, it was, really kind of limited numbers, so it could be like a really meaningful experience for everybody. And the day, it was talks in the morning. So there was a talk from Morbid, really kind of giving historical perspective and context on the project and the Middlesbrough Winter Gardens and kind of the Heritage Action Zone, and really kind of providing that context. And then I gave a talk on introducing my proposal and what I was intending to investigate for the commission, and also introducing reportage drawing and what it is, and giving an introduction to what we'd be doing in the workshop. And then we went to base camp and the Zetland Bar and Restaurant to actually do the drawings, do the reportage illustrations. This was really good because I think the two amazing venues, such interesting buildings, and that have just amazing architectural details. And we were lucky enough at base camp, we were there on a day when there was quite a lot going on. So there was a vintage clothes fair, and there was also a record fair as well. And then we were fortunate enough for the owner, Graham, gave us a tour of the building, so we got to see the basement and the recording studios there and the offices and everything, which was really interesting. So it was just really good because everybody just got kind of stuck in, and there was lots to draw and record. And then we moved on to the Zetland Bar and Restaurant, which was just completely different. I would say it's possibly like, it's more kind of elegant, quieter venue. The dining room you can see here, that's fully tiled, it's absolutely stunning. It's really beautiful. We were joined by candlelight, so it was really kind of a different feel, and there was lots to capture. So it was really helpful for me. I didn't actually get an opportunity to do any drawing on that day because I was facilitating, but it really kind of, again, it was sparked a lot of ideas just being in that kind of, very much like the tour with Morbid that I'd done previously, just kind of being in the environment, working with other people, interacting as artists within that environment, and seeing what were they picking out, what were they drawing, what were they commenting on, what were their views and thoughts. Really, it was interesting to get Graham's perspective on base camp, and also Philip's perspective, the owner of the Zetland Bar and Restaurant, his perspective, talking about, he gave us a little talk about the history of the building as well, which was really interesting. So it was really just, again, expanding that understanding of really kind of what the area is and what the area is about, and really thinking about that leisure and recreation idea that's been inspired by the Winter Gardens, and thinking about, in this area, in the Heritage Action Zone in Middlesbrough in 2021, how are people interacting with these spaces, and how are people using their time whether that's, they're going to record fairs, or, having a meal or drinks, or, coming to the bar after the match and things like that. So that was really a really valuable day from that perspective as well. And again, like I said earlier, we got some excellent drawings for the exhibition as well. So the next step in my research process was to return to the house to take reference photos. So you might recognise some of these in the final artwork as well if you're eagle-eyed. And I found that I was especially drawn to architectural details and signage and typography. So I decided in this case that I was kind of mainly going to work from photos, because the things that I've decided to capture was based on the buildings really, rather than capturing people walking around or doing full scenes. And my intention at this point, after having spent some time in the Heritage Action Zone, was that I was really interested in these architectural details and the signage, and that I wanted to do something where I captured all of these elements and put them together kind of a little bit in a collage style as well, because the way I tend to work is I'll draw and do the line work and analog in a sketchbook, and then I'll take my work into digital, usually Photoshop actually, and then I'll do the composition and the color in there after having kind of previously drawn the separate elements as well, because I just, I find that easier, and also in terms of kind of commercial workflow and working as fast as possible, it's the quickest way to do it. So luckily as well, I picked, I decided to go out when it was a really kind of nice sunny day as well. As you can see, lovely blue skies that we were still having at that time of year, just to, so that was the best light for kind of capturing things really. And just, I think, again, it's what it was really interesting to kind of really look with fresh eyes at what was there, and really kind of take an interest, because I'm sure I'm certainly guilty of it, and I think everybody is. There is some amazing architecture in Middlesbrough, but a lot of it you miss if you kind of don't look up, or you're not really looking, and it gets kind of lost amongst everything else. Whereas we do have some kind of real gems, which is what Hidden Middlesbrough is really helping uncover throughout the programme. So these are some keystones here that were taken from the original Royal Exchange building that was demolished to make in the 80s, in the 80s to make way for the A66. And I quite like these because there was an opportunity to sort of draw some people and some faces, but stone faces. We've got here, I think, really that one of the details that really it struck me and has always kind of stood out is the kind of green top turret there on Commercial House as well. I would say that's kind of pretty iconic, and if you had a photograph of that, people know it's Commercial House. And then also on the right hand side, actually the train station as well, which has got some really kind of interesting kind of Victorian Gothic details on it as well. So yeah, so that was just another part of the process. So I was kind of out there taking photographs and to draw from, and really kind of just picking out, just not really filtering it, just taking photographs of anything that I really found interesting and I thought really kind of was aesthetically pleasing or might be interesting to draw or historically relevant. And also really those pieces of kind of architecture, signage, buildings that people would look at and be like, oh right, yeah, they would be able to definitely locate them as being in and around Exchange Square. So once I'd taken the reference photos, I moved on to drawing. So as I said before, I usually do my drawings analog in a sketchbook and then I'll take into digital. So I would tend to work with a fine liner, no pencils or anything like that. I like to just draw straight in without any guidelines, because I find that most of the time I do that, not always, but I find for me, if I kind of do pencil guidelines or anything, I just find it like it kills it a little bit and it loses the energy that it has when I just work straight into pen. So I just experimented with drawing out some of the elements that I found particularly interesting, and really trying to get a balance of interesting shapes, interesting, that balance of detail, because I didn't want too much detail in terms to really be overcrowd the image. I did want those kind of, I did want the areas of kind of blank space and areas that were more kind of shape, and also getting that typography in there as well. So I've got the Zetland Road sign there as well, and as you can see at the top, the commercial house building as well, because I was just like, I'm definitely drawing that because it's really interesting. So yeah, as you can see here, it's just kind of basic sketches. So originally my intention, I was thinking that perhaps I would stay in black and white to do for the actual final piece for the billboard. But once I started working into it, I realized I was just like, just kind of wasn't very exciting. And I did think more about one of my initial inspirations, which was looking at, like the La Quena, like really like bright colors and things. So at this point, I took my work into Adobe Illustrator. So I imported into Illustrator to live trace the line work, and which turns it into a vector, and then recolor and also have the composition of the piece as well. So if anybody's not familiar with Illustrator, it's a vector program. So that means that unlike Photoshop, which is the other kind of main kind of digital visual package you use as an artist or an illustrator, the work can be blown up to any size, like really big, with no loss of quality. So if I'd have done it in Photoshop, the line work would have been pixelated, whereas if doing it in Illustrator, it means that you still really get those clean lines, which is definitely what I wanted. And also you can really easily recolor the line work as well. So if you're kind of playing around with different color palettes, it's so easy to change them as well. So that was kind of the next step of the process, and that was really interesting as well, because I wouldn't normally use Adobe Illustrator. I would normally use Photoshop. So I did find that really good, actually, and that was because this is the biggest scale I've ever worked at. I don't think I've done any like commissions or commercial work really that have gone above A3 before. So this was really good, and I think that's the great thing, I think, about working on kind of different commissions and briefs, that it really forces you to develop your practice as well. And I've really found this with this commission, which was great, and find a way to kind of make your work fit. And in terms of this as well, it was very much a kind of a technological consideration as well, to be like, well, I know what I'm going to do, but then how can I translate it for that size and still have it to look how I want it to. And also in terms of the color palette, I wanted to go for those really kind of bright colors, because in a lot of my work I do tend to go for, I kind of do have quite a color palette, which I don't consciously think of actually, but I think I have started to develop one. So that's kind of the purples and pinks and oranges and quite bright, and quite a lot of pastels in there as well. So that was definitely something I wanted to incorporate. So this is my artboard from where I've just live traced all of the work in black. Like I said, it was kind of, originally I was thinking I could possibly go down the route of keeping it black and white and having that, just having it really kind of simple and pared back, but it just wasn't, I feel like I wasn't really feeling that energy from it. And I definitely decided at this point, when seeing it all kind of come together and compositing the different elements and the different assets that I have here, I definitely decided that colour was the way to go, and really kind of wanting to kind of, I thought the colour would really help with the balance, especially balance of kind of detail, areas of detail and areas where it's kind of more simpler shapes as well, because I wanted to overlay the images. So there was an overlap as well, and I didn't really think that would work in the way that I wanted to, doing black and white. So this is an example of my artboard in Illustrator, where I was just having, play around with all the different colours and really like blowing the different assets up really big, and then playing around with size and stuff. And this was really fun actually, and I always enjoy this bit of the process where you've kind of done the hard bit, which is the drawing, and you're really just playing around with colour and composition, which is, it's so easy to do if you're working digitally. And yeah, just kind of having to play around. I did experiment with going really large with the images, almost so they were kind of running off the banner full bleed, and maybe going a little bit abstract almost. But after having to play around, I decided, you know, that wasn't the way to go, and I landed on my final design, which you can see here. So I've got Basecamp in there, and I've got the Zetland as well as a little nod, because they're both really kind of interesting to draw, and also a little bit of a nod to our interactive research day. I've got the signage there from Zetland Road, but I've also got some signage, as you can see there, from Spenceley's Emporium, and the actual late bar typography that comes from Spenceley's as well, but it's actually on the typography, it says Spenceley's late bar on the stone steps on the front entrance as well. I've also got the welcome to Middlesbrough, we are Middlesbrough sign in there as well. I decided to include that because I think I wanted to have something modern in there, because the piece is inspired by recreation within, you know, now. So I wanted to kind of, we've got some venues here, so the Zetland and Basecamp, where they are really, you know, it's breathing new life into kind of these old historical venues. And Basecamp, actually, I think it was the town's first post office actually, but I wanted to get that kind of sense of modernity in there as well. And also I think it's nice that it's got the directions to other areas in the town centre, so like Mima and Centre Square and the university and stuff, which really kind of speaks to where Middlesbrough's at in 2021 as well. And also it was partly just because of the shape as well, because I needed something that was like tall and thin in terms of composition. And then the motifs I've got here, so the circular flower, and then the two kind of floral type shapes, they come from, this one on the top here as well is from tiles on the outside of Kalinka Bar. And then these two motifs here, they actually come from a stone carving in a pillar at Middlesbrough train station as well. So by calling the piece recreation or recreation, it can be read two ways really. So it's about recreations taken is a chapter title in At the Works as well, and it was really kind of like, right, I am looking, it's really good because it is what it's about. I'm talking about recreation and leisure within the Heritage Action Zone, and you know, inspired by the Winter Gardens, which is a recreation venue, but also it's recreation, two words, because of the kind of the transition that Exchange Square and the Heritage Action is going through in terms of the council regeneration and the new buildings, the new kind of buildings and businesses there, and it's really kind of, the area is really kind of getting an uplift now. And again, it was, like I said before, it's really about capturing that moment in time in a kind of reportage inspired way. So we've got this record of, you know, this state of flux that we're in at the moment. You know, there's some places already opened, but there's more regeneration coming. You know, it's going to look, in the future it's going to look different, but I really wanted something that really represents where, you know, where Exchange Square is and the Heritage Action Zone and the venues there, where it is kind of autumn winter 2021 as well. And just that really having that sense of just it's going a little bit abstract in terms of it's figurative in terms you can see clearly what all of the elements are and you can recognize them, but almost going a little bit abstract with them being overlaid in terms of the color, working with the kind of different bright colors. That's enabled me to do that as well.